and welcome to the next block in the Crisis Worker Training for Providence Life Crisis Services. This block is going to be on compliance and confidentiality. This is of particular importance, so I advise you to open your workbook to this section of your PowerPoints and follow along. First thing we're going to discuss is HIPAA. HIPAA stands for Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. Provident and all associates therein, interns, volunteers, are subject to the full extent of the HIPAA laws and regulations. You have already been emailed a link to watch the Providence required HIPAA video and to complete the quiz for Providence Life Crisis Services. You will need to turn in your quiz, not your certificate, to staff during your training in order to be able to work the hotline. Again, you need to turn in the quiz from the video that you watched on HIPAA to the trainer in order to be able to work the hotline. Now we're going to discuss how compliance, confidentiality, and HIPAA play into working the crisis hotlines. First thing we are going to discuss is mandated reporting. Crisis workers are mandated reporters. This means regardless of the reason why you're here, what your background, your job, or position elsewhere, as soon as you are a crisis worker, that legally makes you a mandated reporter. Who do we do mandating reporting for? We would do mandating reporting for children who are under the age of 18 who are experiencing abuse or neglect, seniors over the age of 60 who are experiencing abuse, neglect, financial abuse, and the disabled, so anyone at any age with a disability. So what do we report? Abuse such as physical injury, sexual abuse, or emotional abuse, neglect, failure to provide proper and necessary support, education as required by law, nutrition or medical, surgical, or any other care necessary for the individual's well-being. Financial exploitation. Knowingly and by deception, intimidation, or force obtains control over an elderly or disabled person's property with the intent to permanently deprive the elderly or disabled person of the use, benefit, or possession of his or her property, thereby benefiting such person or detrimentally affecting the elderly or disabled person. I want to mention quickly that disabled person, if a minor is disabled, you contact the child abuse hotline. However, if you have an adult who is disabled, you contact the elder abuse hotline. So an example would be a 25-year-old who is diagnosed with Down syndrome and has a legal guardian who is taking care of them. If they are being abused, then you contact the elder abuse hotline. So how do we intervene? We're looking for red flags, something that feels just a little bit off. Always assess for risk, especially immediate danger, such as a meth lab or any sort of violence. Gather as much information as possible in a sensitive manner. So explore how long the abuse has been going on, how often, any other people that are in the house facing the situation, such as other children. When did the abuse start, and when was the most recent event? Do your best to obtain as much demographic information as possible, first and last names of all parties, victims as well as suspects, ages, and addresses. If children are involved, try to get the name of the schools, as many child abuse investigators will go to and speak with children while they are in school. Always call pager before calling the child abuse hotline and neglect hotline. While you really don't need permission, pager needs to know what's going on. After you've informed pager, try to get the caller to conference call the hotline with you. If the caller refuses to conference call, give them the appropriate phone number and urge them to call. This is a situation in which, such as a neighbor is calling concerned about their neighbor's kids who appear to be neglected and abused, you attempt to get that neighbor to contact the child abuse hotline in a conference call in order to facilitate that report. However, if they don't wish to conference call, but they promise to call the child abuse hotline, you must also call as a mandated reporter. So even if somebody is telling you, you must call as well. When callers report prior abuse or neglect, assess for the current abuse and neglect. Who else is in the household? The younger siblings, cousins, grandchildren? Is anyone else currently being abused or neglected or at risk for abuse and neglect? Even when you have minimal information, make the report. And we mean minimal information as in only a first name, only a phone number, or even only a phone number. There may already be a file from prior reports that could contain that phone number, or there may be future reports. All of the information when you call the hotline is documented, even if it doesn't result in an investigation for this specific call. Incident reports. Provident is overseen by the Joint Commission, which requires incident reports as a part of their quality standards for accreditation. Incident reports are filled out by anyone who is aware of an incident and/or is aware of the incident firsthand. This includes crisis workers. There's also incident report logs in the crisis rooms and hope after rooms, which are filled out by hand and are located on the desks. If an issue arises that requires more detail than the log can record, fill out a full incident report form and submit it to Pager or the CIS person by the end of the crisis worker's shifts. This may be seen on a quiz that you give the incident report to the staff person in the building at the time you complete the report. If a staff person is not available, please put the incident report in the current director, Jane Smith's, hanging folder in the supply room across from the printer. Failure to complete and turn in an incident report will be reported to the crisis worker supervisor and will impact their assessment. So the logs versus reports. An incident log, which is in the crisis room and hope after room, keeps track of our routine and necessary incidents. An actual incident report, the large form, is for unusual global incidents. When do you use the log that's in the crisis room? On the counter, underneath, on the clipboard. Anytime there is a breach of confidentiality, something that falls within our policies and procedures, such as emergency procedures, calling the police for a suicidal subject or a homicidal subject, whenever we contact a trusted adult for minors or any other third party on behalf of a caller, or to whenever we report any sort of abuse, child abuse, or elder abuse. When our incident report's completed, if there's an equipment malfunction, such as iCarol going down, the phone system going down, or if there is an injury of some sort to a crisis worker or staff person. Additionally, if there's a breach of agency standards and policies, such as a crisis worker being late or the crisis room is not staffed. Examples of when to make reports. Security. If the door alarm goes off, if the front door is unlocked after hours, unusual or egregious breaches of confidentiality, such as a crisis worker looking up a caller on Facebook or other internet media. This is not allowed except in extreme suicide in progress calls. You may look up a caller on Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media only if they have a suicide in progress or an imminent suicide risk. Crisis worker, another egregious breach of confidentiality is if a crisis worker gives third-party clinical information about a non-suicidal caller. When in doubt on which to complete a log or whether or not to complete a report, call Pager. Now, in your test booklet, there is a quiz that is specific for the Life Crisis Services Compliance PowerPoint presentation. So not only have you completed the quiz based upon the video, which again will need to be collected during training, bring it with you, you also now must find in your test booklet and complete the Compliance and Confidentiality quiz, which is based off of the slides for Life Crisis Services.